Welcome, everyone. This is, of course, Gamer 1745 here with my continuing playthrough of Hearts of Iron 3's Black Ice 11.2. And, of course, we're playing as the U.S.A. And I will also say there are a few events from Third Reich events, that mostly you don't see because some of them are just only affecting America, though. Some are sort of German in America, so you don't only see them from the German side. We will be seeing them from the U.S. side. Right, okay, well. Yes, I thought we had... I'm going to continue to push our industry first and fast. Yeah, I was informed, I think it was back in 10-something or other, that they made for America... heavy industry buildable, which I think is reasonably appropriate. I don't have a problem with that because America really does ramp up industry. You know what, we can be building both of these at once, so yeah, that would be a smart thing to do. And that would be a smart thing to do there. There was. You can look at America in multiple ways for Hearts of Iron. According to the devs who worked on Hearts of Iron 3 and Hearts of Iron 4, America was sort of seen as, you know, the final boss country kind of thing. And that's a reasonable way to look at it. And if you're, you know, well, if you're the point of invading the United States, maybe you've already won the game, so it may not matter. Because, you know, this is what, like the old Third Reich games that I played as a kid. They just sort of had a, you know, and it was a, you know, sort of Euro-based, you know, yes, you had the North Africa and whatnot, but it was a more or less this map. I don't even know how far. I think it went up to Murmansk, but it's been so long since I played that. And it was just basically sort of this map, roughly. And then they'd have, you know, boxes up over in the corner here for U.S.A. and Canada, so that stuff would come on there and then have to be, you know, to be effectively shipped. So you could argue that for playing a World War II game, this could be all off map, and that would be a reasonable argument looking at the realities of the situation. You really are not, you know, even if you get like the America bomber for Germany or something that can be a transatlantic bomber, you know, fly both ways. Do you really need to specify that you're bombarding New York City, or are you just bombarding the American box? You know, you know, so it's, you know, placement, and I know partially because I've increased for Third Reich events Germany's industry in certain places. Hey, Arno, first on YouTube, well, you haven't even made it over well, first on Twitch, I should say. You haven't even made it over on YouTube, and John's already said hi over there. How you doing, my friend, Arno? And I know this is just sort of game theory and game design theory. Nothing really new since yesterday. Oh, I don't know. Yeah, you were around yesterday. Yeah, of course you were. Hey, ZZ. Good morning to you. And yes, Jackal Parker? I don't know how to PKR. Yes, almost second, sort of third there as you're coming in. Good to have you here. So yeah. Oh, so yeah, I've added some recently, and I know you guys don't follow everything I do. Recently, I found, well, actually, it was also when I looked up, World Ablaze mod had it. So, but and somebody else was pointing out major oil fields in Burma, and that weren't on the map. And I mean major ones. And I posted this both in the Black Ice forum as well as the Hearts of Iron 4 forum. And one of the people over there who works and helps and manages, and there is this oil field up here, the resources for Hearts of Iron 4 did see and responded to it. And they were looking around, and there was, is this an oil field here that should be in Burma or whatever? And there was another in Hearts of Iron 4. There was, I think over in this part of India, there was an Indian oil field here that was post-war found and developed. So that was wrong. And I think this should be more over here, but I'm not absolutely sure. And their solution was that, at least is starting, it's a zero-sum game, in that they've determined, and they specified it from some survey in like 1936 or something, or around that time period. Maybe it's 1935. I forget. They posted it. If you're curious, you can go over and find it. World oil production, and that's they're sort of using as their base standard. Whether that's right or not, because how correct was the information, say, on the Soviet Union? Were everyone reporting their oil correctly, their oil production correctly? So but they're using that as a base standard. So I don't know when or if, probably will, the oil field will show up in Burma for Hearts of Iron 4, and a shifting of some of the Indian oil fields to historical ones. But they weren't going to increase the overall amount of oil field production on the map. They were just going to shift locations, because for their game, for whatever within game mechanics for increasing oil production, fine, but they don't want to jiggle the base. Well, I know there's some chat here, and I'm just thinking I'll get to the chat and say hi to everybody, or whatever. Don't worry, not going to leave anything unread. But I sort of disagree with that. Yes, things don't magically appear out of nowhere, whether it's industrial centers, ICs, or whether it's resources. But since we're sort of, I don't know, retconning isn't maybe the right term. We're sort of reverse engineering production capabilities, as opposed to actually knowing what the production capabilities were. We're trying to guess at it. I know enough from looking and reading articles, I don't do any like first, and first person digging in the German archives or anything, even whether it's captured here in America or whatever. But I'm not doing that. I'm reading articles from people who have done these kinds of things over the years, and I know that with like German production, the government is like asking, hey, can you produce us 50 of these airplanes in the next 3 months? And the company's like going, yeah, sure. But nowhere in my understanding is, it's not that they will, 50 airplanes in 3 months, so that's their production capacity. No, that's what the government ordered. Even and within some of these things, because, know a little bit more on tanks, maybe 50 tanks or something, is that they only wanted to buy 50 of them so they could drive around and test them and tell the company how they want changes made for the next batch. But that without going to extraordinary measures, meaning putting on a second shift or a third shift of production workers, or without going to a weekend also work, going to a total war, get in here and start producing tanks as fast as you can, because I don't think, when the Soviets were, and I know I'm jumping around here, hopefully it's interesting, when the Soviets, were moving factories from, this part of the Soviet Union to the east and setting them up, sometimes they were literally setting them up in fields next to the railroad yards and putting them into production, while maybe on the other side of the tracks where they unloaded the stuff, they're starting to build the buildings to then eventually move the machinery into a building, that's going to be able to operate in winter or whatever within the Soviet Union. But they were immediately in the fields cooking these machines up to whatever power support sources that were available, and because they also moved them with the workers. And those workers, I don't think they took weekends off and just had or only worked 8 hours a day. Now, obviously, they've got to sleep sometime, and there's, I'm surely, as they're dealing with all this stuff, interrupting production, but still they were immediately getting back into production. But once they sort of got the facilities going, even then, I don't know that the Soviet workers, were they just working a 5-day work week, or were they working a 7-day work week, or what their work week was. I just don't know. I'm sure it varied because, different times during the war, different factories, whatever. So I don't. And, production on oil fields, and this is where, Hearts of Iron 4 doesn't want to have huge stocks of oil because, because not necessarily they didn't want to stock up, because where do you store it? You only pull the oil out of the ground, and this is quite true to a degree, that you currently need. And so oil production, so oil for somebody like, I know France had a huge stock of oil. Basically, one of the documentary, The Prize, there's also a book, a big thick book goes along with it. And it's talking about oil in the 20th century as being the prize. Estimated that the oil captured in France, including, because they also took it out of what was the Vichy France area, was basically a year's worth of oil that Germany's use capacity during World War II. So it was like a 1 year of free oil. So that France was bringing in and storing up oil in France, in case there was, problems, war with Germany or something. And so Germany was also getting oil reserves. Now, a lot of times you store oil underground, which is interesting too. But so there definitely were oil reserves being done. But I know at this time, America didn't have any oil reserves. If they weren't going to be able to sell their oil, they just capped the oil wells, just shut them down and wait. I don't know the details, but just when the breakup of Standard Oil, and I probably should look it up, whether it was by this time period or not, but Standard Oil was almost like, as they say, Standard Oil. It at some point basically gets a near monopoly on oil. And so they're price controlling the oil. They don't want to have oil to be too cheap. Um, and that was sort of the problem with the situation there, because if you price, you want competition to keep costs from going up too much, single control point. So I don't know that we have good, reliable um, figures for oil production in the United States, what it should be, or what it could be. We may have good, reliable oil numbers of oil production of what it was, which is different than what it could be, meaning what they were producing versus what they could produce. And I know during World War II, there was no oil shortage for the U.S., or if you were to expand this out, because there's a lot down in Venezuela that was in production. There's Pemex in Mexico. There's a lot of other oil production. There was no oil shortages at all. I do not believe, not absolutely sure on this, but I do not believe there was any gasoline shortages for the United States. There was a serious rubber shortage, and I know we'll get to all this stuff, and I'm sort of talking around things. There was a serious rubber shortage. So how do you control that? Ration gasoline, because if you don't use the tires up, they wanted to. Their main thing is they wanted to not have cars use up their tires, so they institute gasoline rationing. Now, so the Black Ice people are increasing in a future version some of the oil here. Not it's only going to be like a one or two oil fields, and then there's also oil fields in India. So here, whether you're like the Hearts of Iron Forum, getting to the whole design philosophy of war games and how to reconstruct this stuff, the U.S., the location of where the oil wells are maybe not terribly important. And if we do research and find another major oil field, do we increase the amount of oil available in the game, or we just shift oil around in the game? That's a philosophical design problem. But it does matter for here, because Japan captures and eventually gets back into production, though they do mention that they destroyed certain levels of production of the oil field, as well as there was a refinery for gasoline up in here. But they get it back into operation, the Japanese do it, and enough that the American, well, I think it's Americans, but the Allies later bomb the fields to try to reduce the levels of production. So that's real. So the oil fields over, say, in India are not captured, so where they are is important. So I don't know. I know this has gotten off topic here a bit, but for the U.S. and industry, how much does it matter? I don't know the locations of all these things, because obviously there was a lot of industry going on in Philadelphia, and I'm just now building it here. But how much should you move? I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so how much have I increased this? Okay, I want to increase this. I know I've sort of talked around a lot. I'm not just trying to increase future production. Yeah, okay, I want to industrialization. And yeah, okay. Let's move these to the top. And then let's move all of these to the top, because these are further along in production, and that we want to focus on those. first before we get into carriers and whatnot. Now, because we are having um, revolt issues that I was informed are partially, some of my choices on do we want to have revolts or not, I still, I look at that as not whether I think there should be revolts in the U.S. Um, let's move an semi-motorized infantry division around. Okay, we'll send you out here. Okay, and thank you, Jackal. Yes, we do want to do a U.S. series. I'm actually getting more and more stoked, but watch your YouTube videos in the series. Glad to. Very good, ZZ. Yeah, okay. What are you going to send to the Philippines? Nothing as yet because, see, I pay attention to history. And I know the Japanese are not going to be attacking until, late 1941. Um, and as we get near to 1941, Arno, I will evaluate what I have as for troops and whatnot. I will be reinforcing Guam here. Dual purpose guns, that is, and we'll let that continue because it's a 36 technology, cavalry, exploitation, advanced order. Let that continue as well. I will try to defend Guam as well, and I don't like that they split this into two provinces. I disagree with it. I know the designer of that was on here a while ago and asked me about that. And yeah, I had to say I don't think it's good at this scale. At this scale of a game. And what it really is not so much a problem as a player, but it is a problem for the AI because whether it's the American garrison here or a Japanese garrison on, because I think they also was Iwo Jima. Is that the one that they also did two out? Yeah, here. You have the port here, and then you have Sarabachi here. Because the AI is going to put its troops here, and then it's not a good solution. It just isn't. Heavy AA guns. Under artillery and here 39. Yeah, stop that. I get it on a more on a closer focused, closer scaled. Don't know what I should be doing here because I'm not used to playing America as to what expect to have a 36 technology that I should be researching. But I think we should be into 37. So I see that there. But let's come up here and start looking at sort of industrial base stuff, whereas like here, a game that's based on the say Pacific campaign or something, this sort of region or something, the scale might be better, but not here in the way this game works. Soviet Union, we would give them money for fuel. No, we're not buying fuel. Now, I will say I'm only planning on holding this sort of area in the Philippines, I think. Fuel. I can quickly look here since Arno's brought it up. There's nothing that we need down here. Yeah, there's a victory point down here and some others, but it's not really so much to keep, say, the Philippines in the war. Just talk 3 victory points, a victory point. Yeah, that would, and 3 here. So if we sort of hold this area here, we'd probably keep the Philippines in the war. It's more just to, who is this with? Colombia? No, not a chance. Hey, Scott Huffman, how you doing? Yes, the U.S.A. No, we're not buying fuel. We don't need fuel. Yeah, please. I hate these things. We'll move the infantry division. It'd probably move faster. Let's move one of these garrison units down to Charleston here to deal with. There really wasn't any sort of uproar. I gotta look into a couple things. What the bonus army was much before this, wasn't it? Eastern Defense Command. I don't know. I gotta look at the bonus army. We would give them crude oil for money. Yes, we'll do that. Yes, J. Edgar Hoover. He was one scary individual. Thank you, Scott. I'm glad you enjoy the videos. Yeah. In my opinion, America is clearly, undisputably one of the best countries to have ever existed on the planet, but it is not perfect. Attack tactics, that would be under air, I believe. Okay, yes, we are starting to look at 36, but I want to look over here, or for 37s, I want to look over here. First for, okay, so we're going to do our road networks. Well, let's start down here. Some of them more difficult to do. America, or the American zeitgeist might be the good term to, let's have the thing move forward here. The American zeitgeist might be the right term. Believes in processes. This is something that including Americans don't maybe often contemplate this and understand it. They believe in, we have too much here on spies, so let's, well, maybe we should use some of the spies. So let's come over here and see about doing that. No, let's spy on Germany. We can do a bit of tech espionage support. Maybe build up some covert operations points. That could be interesting. We're going to do some tech espionage, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal because we're going to be very technologically advanced. Well, you know, one thing I dislike in this game is sometimes it's Britain, sometimes it's England, sometimes it's United Kingdom, and I always sort of wonder where I'm supposed to be looking for this nation. Steel U-boat tech. Well, we may have more advanced tech. See, this is the thing is, if you have the most advanced tech, we're going to keep tabs on our friends here. Well, we might throw in rulings party support and maybe a little tech espionage. I don't know. Now we don't get to pick what. Do a bit of that and some covert operation. So we'll just do some of that. See how that goes. Yes, we'll give you energy. The Germans had at this point, I believe. Well, they might, but yeah. Well, we got some 38s here. I don't know. We're pushing fairly hard into it, so we'll see. We'll see what comes about. We did put a little bit in for that. Okay. Like I was saying, America believes in processes. If you put the right process into place, America, the zeitgeist, believes that it'll just work. Now, we often see this like in elections that we put into like Iraq. We believe that if we put in the process and they'll just have elections and they'll just become democratic. Where in fact, they very well may have a free and fair democratic elections, but that can just mean who decides who gets to be in charge. And then after that point, and unless there's, Americans sitting around all the leaders with guns all the time, they may just decide not to hold any more elections, or the future elections might be rigged. And so when we set up organizations like the FBI, that America believes until yes, enough. Well, I don't know how many Americans know about J. Edgar Hoover, but in some of his corruption, and it wasn't, to the best of my knowledge, he wasn't stealing money or anything like that. It was a power corruption. It wasn't like that's what Americans often. Oh well, did they steal? All their corruption is all seeming to be focused on political leaders stealing money, and they do, or take bribes or whatever they do. But it's often or as much about power corruptions, not about specifically breaking the law and stealing money or taking bribes or whatever. Artillery units. Okay, so that's still back on there, and we'll let that continue because we are moving into 37 technologies. But this just seems, how long until, $100. Well, we'll move the big red one over this way then. This just seems ridiculous. Maybe you'll get lucky and get dual purpose AA tech. Well, we already have some. Oh, you're talking about well, we wherever it is, here, down here, yeah. Or we'll just get that eventually here. Modern FBI in the U.S.A. is politicized and highly corrupt. Hello, Lord Samuel. I would say, yeah, like I'm saying, I don't think there's any FBI agents taking bribes. I do say it's politicized, and in that sense, it is corrupt. Well, lobbying is just legal bribes. Not entirely. Lobbying can be, Senator, I would like to contribute the money to your re-election campaign. Well, it used to be, I think it ended sometime in the 90s, but it used to be when your campaign funds, you could, people give you money to run for election or re-election, and when you retired from Congress, you got to keep any extra money, but you could only keep it after you retired, not while you're in office. That has since been removed, so you don't get to keep that money. But we have seen, and it's on both sides of the aisle. I can say that because I gotta say it's on both sides of the aisle, but I specifically know of AOC's, the Congresswoman's boyfriend gets hired by a company that she gives a lot of money to do some maybe legitimate campaign type work, but they hire her boyfriend and pay him a lot of money. Was that laundering campaign contribution money, that she was given to this other company? This other company, gets its cut of it and then pays the boyfriend off? Or was he doing legitimate working at the regular per hour or per whatever basis? I don't know. I'm not looking into it. But those are facts because those are all reported on legal documents. I'm not just saying reported in the papers. I'm saying legal documents because the legal document shows that her campaign finances paid this company, and legal documents show that her boyfriend worked for this company and he got paid. So it's a fact. But, so some of it is, yes, here's contributions to your campaign. That can be legal bribery. But lobbying also is, hello, Congressman. I represent the NRA. There's the National Recovery Act, the NRA going on right now. The NRA, the National Rifle Association, also existed, but during this time period, and you may see some of my iconography I'll use for thumbnails will be the NRA stuff, and that's the National Recovery Act. But the NRA, as in the National Rifle Association, will go to a congressman and say, I'm from the NRA, an organization that I'm a lifetime member of, so I'm, I'm not trying to play favorites or whatever here. We'll go and say, and there are 5,000 NRA members in your district. Are you going to support this gun rights issue, or not support, something that's going to take away gun rights? And if you don't support this, we will tell all 5,000 of our members not to vote for you, whether in the primary or the general election or whatever, because maybe it's, if they'll support the Republican over the Democrat, maybe in the general, but in the primary, we'll try to, get you out. So sometimes lobbying, and is that wrong? No, that's just you're representing, it's sort of like representing a union. You're representing a group of people that, a representative goes to a government official, because it's not always elected, but goes to often an elected government official, and say, we represent this group of people, whether it's the AARP, which is Association of or American Association of Retired Pearsons or something. It represents older people. There's lobbying groups. Yes. Sometimes the NRA will also give them money, but it also specifically will say, we represent these many people in your district or your state or whatever. So lobbying isn't just legal bribery, though there is an element there. In my opinion, the FBI is a political tool of the Democrat. Yeah, I would say that the government bureaucracy is overwhelmingly left. I was going to say center left, but I'm adjusting it. Overwhelmingly left in America. The RCMP is the same Canadian. Yeah, it seems that way. If it quacks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably corruption. Yes, good one, Scott. Yes, gamer and guns, of course. Want to know something about Canada? There's a permanent anti-corruption organization. Yeah, well, do note that there is, and this is a truism. There is nothing more permanent than a temporary government program. That is a generalized fact. So yeah, America is not. We don't need that many diplomats. So let's come over here. Okay, lock this back down because we're deciding to do lock that down because I don't want to do more of that. We're going. Let's. Well, we have 250, so let's just go to 0 here, which will mean we have slightly more. We'll do that since we're right. So whether you're an American or overseas, but there is, in my opinion, less corruption of all sorts. Because corruption can be, criminal in the sense of, taking bribes or whatever to do your job, or it can just simply be, favoritism, where you focus on things. But there is generally less corruption in, I was going to say America, but I'm going to adjust that. Generally less corruption in Anglified countries. And that is an important element. So an Anglophone, not that there's none, because we can see, in my opinion, corruption, particularly in Canada and New Zealand now, but it's power corruptions. Have fun with Kaiserreich. Yeah, Kaiserreich is sort of cool, but I call it the wild and wacky world of Kaiserreich. It sort of holds together as a thing, but it's that. Off the Quebec police. Yeah. Okay, capital ship. So let's come over. Okay, here. Okay, cancel. We're not going to do 39 technologies yet. We might be doing, well, we are doing 37s. And I don't know if we're going to go all the way to 38s. Yeah. In America, I don't know about everywhere else. But in America, the police chief in at least most cities, the police chief is appointed by the mayor, and the police chief is the person who sets the policies of the police in the city and has, to whatever degree, the ability to hire and fire policemen. So your police whether it's, again, like corruption of, hey, taking bribes or doing protection rackets in your police or in your city by the police or something, or just simply what laws do you enforce or not enforce. If somebody paints a rainbow flag in the city streets, does the police stop them from doing it, or do they protect from other people doing it? And let's take something not terribly controversial, but if a different group goes into a different place, not on top of it but down the street from it, and paints a big American flag, though you're not supposed to drive on the American flag, but let's just say paints an American flag in the streets, do they allow that as well, or do they stop that but allow the rainbow flag? It just as, I didn't want to go with some other, what laws do they enforce or not enforce comes in. Now, most areas in America also have a sheriff. Now, the sheriff is an elected official, and so that it's a different situation. fighter pilot training, which, yes, the mayor is elected too. Okay, 37. We'll let that continue because that's what we're doing now. Okay, what are you thinking of long-term naval development following historical past or something? Well, I'm definitely going to, I'm building up my industry here and now, and want to do that. Then I'm definitely going to build through this historical starting. I don't know if they're, because I've not, like I say, I've not played America before. I've turned it on a few times, but I've never played America before, so I don't know what's going to happen. If there are events to put in historical battleships and such, I will do that. We are definitely going to look at a heavy focus on naval capabilities, unlike my normal German sort of playthroughs. So I think we have enough supply. So what we're going to do is we're going to not to like nothing, but I don't think we need to, because we got a big cushion now here. We'll change that. So yeah, unlike my German stuff, which I generally tend to avoid much naval production. Okay, we can let that continue. Highly focused. We will definitely be doing carriers for sure. I don't know in game terms whether the like the New Jersey class or whatever is considered a super battleship or not, but I'm definitely on the, or have the willingness to look at something like that, where normally to me it's silly for most countries, not silly for the U.S. Still amazing the Enterprise was the only super carrier until 1937, still alive until the end of the war. Oh, that's interesting. I know the Japanese did make some super. Well, the Yamato class, yes, or Yamato. I don't know if I think it's just the Yamato. Was definitely getting there. As it has 18-inch guns, where the New Jersey class has 16-inch guns. The most decorated ship of the whole war. Yeah, well, no, the Enterprise did a lot of great campaigns. Seattle strike is one. Okay, big gains elsewhere. Okay, Seattle Post Intelligencer newspaper strike. From that, 1936 newspaper writers employed by the Seattle Post Intelligencer went on strike. The newspaper had about 70 employees on the news staff, including reporters, library employees on the home economics department. The strikes were members of the fledgling American Newspaper Guild, led by the nationally famous journalist Haywood Bowen. I never heard of him. The strike protested arbitrary dismissals and assignment changes and other efficiency moves by the newspapers. It got the support and solidarity of other unions, including the Teamsters, led by Dave Beck, and was one of the first significant and successful strikes by white-collar workers in the United States. Okay, yeah. Oh. Now, I'm not going to rage quit here, people. I'm not going to rage quit, but I'm just... How is a newspaper strike? And yes, okay, the Teamsters probably aren't delivering either paper or ink or to the the printing presses or whatever. But how is that an armed rebellion? How is it even remotely equivalent to an armed rebellion? I don't get this. I don't get this. Integrated. Okay, these I think are here. Okay, yes. We're going to continue the 37s. Okay, yeah, we're going to continue all of these. I'm just 20 battle stars. Well, yeah, they did very well, and they were there from the beginning until, as you say, the end. Port of copper with Greece. No, I don't care about Greece enough. Well, let's spread out our military a little more here. Can we have some garrison forces? We don't need all of these right there. There may be a strike in Newark, New Jersey. I mean, hell, I would just strike from being forced to live in Newark, New Jersey, but that's me. And no, I don't know everything going on in the 30s. There were in the 20s, in the 30s, um, um, there were social disruptions. I'm not going to try to say there weren't. Strike equals civil war. Yeah, it's a bit overmuch. Yeah, yeah, I just don't see it. Now, if you were going to say something like have an effect, and if you look at some of the work done by Revolverheld, he will create a region like called Washington State or Greater Seattle region, and he will put on a various effects into the region, which could disrupt production. Reduce because the levels of here, because it does say likely striking or could pull it. By this, by making it more come on, click here. The more you get of this, the less you get of this. It does modify some of the resources and industry. So I could agree with effects that disrupt, mostly here. Though I can see some that because of the depression, I can see some overall national effects that make production less effective now. I can see some stuff like that. I use a little of those techniques in Third Reich events. Okay, armor unit training. Yeah, we're going to let these continue. Yeah, damaging some buildings or something. I don't know, because there were in some of the coal mines and some of this, people did die, from gunshots. Some of them were the strikers who had guns, or some of them were the sort of Pinkertons or other hired security types. They do come to the realm of thugs and enforcers, yes, and not just security personnel protecting the facilities, but moving on to being offensive tactics. Yeah, that did exist, very much so. But they're small, and normally you can count the actual deaths on a single hand for a serious strike, and there's just a few of them. Okay, Democratic election, Democratic Party. Right. Okay. I guess bribe minister or government accused of cooperating, defend him. See, again, I don't like these things. I kill these in Third Reich events. I put in a file with all of the things removed so you don't see them. Because when it's like the Seattle Post-Intelligencer strike, I like because it's referring to an actual historical event. Well, Democratic Party, Progressive Party. I would think the Progressive Party is more. I don't know. Republican Party, social conservatism. Yeah, America First Committee. uh, Silver Legion, okay, that would be fascism. German American Bund, though I would generally say the Silver Legion is bigger than the German American Bund. Don't know what's down. Their Communist Party, probably a bit overdone for the time period. Social workers, Leninism, okay, that's really different. Left wing radicalism, social party, Democratic Labor Front, yeah. Party. I would swap the progressives and uh, as to who what, but okay. I guess we'll lose 5, whatever. I don't know. Yeah, I don't see that at all. The idea of the American is authoritarian conservatism. They were isolationism. I don't know a lot about the America First Party as it was. I know Charles Lindbergh was a big proponent of it. I don't know that it would have. I don't know. I just quite honestly don't know if it would have a like an economics or social, either one, economics or social views. I think they were just an anti-war party. Hello, Sebastian. Good to have you here. Just purely an anti-war party. You know, because for a while, a lot of the Libertarian Party, I would say, has sort of been America first in the sense of not going to war with other nations. The Republican Party has been America not first for a very long time. No. In that they have championed foreign, up to Cleveland, foreign production and foreign resources over American ones because they're cheaper, as opposed to American workers or American which one to the First Army? Okay, heavy artillery brigades. The Democrats, until the Clinton regime, had been more of American first for as well for economic stuff. The Democrats had really supported production in America for American workers' jobs. Although still most unions still for some reason support the Democrats, under Clinton is when you really start to get the investments, and specifically Clinton opening up into China, which moves huge amounts of both industrial, whether it's making T-shirts and socks or refrigerators or resource, mining or other things, moving that to China away from America, that you really find the Democrats getting on board with the Republicans in moving jobs overseas. Heavy artillery brigades, which would be here. And yes, I'm willing to analyze all parties, in my opinion, honestly, though, of course, I do have my preferred ones. Yeah, they were protectionist, labor union support protection. Yes. Well, because that's their job. A union is supposed to, not to say that they always do, is supposed to advocate for their workers, their members, and which would be to protect jobs wherever they may be. Is supposed to. Now, I do know that some of the labor unions are working to legalize and regularize non-citizens into their unions and try to get dues from them, and so that's which is very bad for the other union members, because labor is a commodity, and if you have 10 job openings in a town, in a city, in wherever, 10, and this is just theoretical, 10 job openings, but only 5 possible workers. Well, those 5 workers will go get the 5 best of those jobs, whether they're the easiest, the best working conditions, the best pay, the fun, as they consider fun, or interesting, however you want to do it, jobs. They'll get the 5 best ones, and the other 5 will go unfulfilled. But if you have 10 job openings and you have 20 people looking for work, well, then you have the situation that the companies can reduce down things like pay, benefits, working conditions. For years, I worked in a place that had no air conditioning. Now, it was a gun store, and they had air conditioning, but they would sort of fix it, quote unquote, and then the freon or whatever would leak out of it again, and 2 weeks later and not work anymore. I mean, it would come on and it would sort of kind of do shit, but it wasn't very good, and they just wouldn't invest money in replacing it and putting on a modern unit. So the working conditions during the summer of heat was bad. Otherwise, the working conditions were great. I loved working there, but the physical environment of being warm in the summer. I know first world problems. Yes, I know. It was hot, and I do know it hurt business because customers did not want to stay there very long. But however you want to define working conditions. So if you have more labor than you have job openings, it won't go so well. So constantly having an inflow of more workers. Well, if the unions are going to get money, $5 a week or a day or whatever from every employee, doesn't matter maybe to them, but it should matter, because the more labor you have, the cheaper the labor becomes. It's just a fact. And the only thing that keeps it from keep going down is things like laws like minimum wage, and that is why the left particularly wants to do a minimum wage so that they can flood the labor market and then have a minimum wage that supposedly handles the situation, as opposed to restrict the labor market to citizens, whatever, and which would then bring the labor wage up naturally as needed. And yes, you're getting a lot of commentary by me because we're talking about America, and I understand and live here. Yeah, they're the greatest failed experiment, bringing capitalism to China, thinking it would end communism, instead of got rich and kept the oppression. Yes, it was an experiment. I wouldn't have done it because I am an anti-communist. I think Bill Clinton and the people around him truly believed. And there were moments there, like Tiananmen Square and whatnot, there were moments there that maybe the regime might fall. There were times looking at China that you might have an authoritarian government in the sense of, hey, we're not democratic, we're just the elites, and we're going to continue to rule. Sort of like the nationalist Chinese government was for a long time, even in Taiwan. Now they're a democratic system, as far as I can tell, but with personal liberty, because you can have a system in which most things, you can do whatever you want, but you don't get to vote for your government. And so like you could theoretically have a libertarian dictatorship. Yeah, we're in charge. We're shutting down all the government offices. Go do whatever you want. But as soon as somebody tries to take power away from us, we're going to squash them, because they want to have a program that does something. No, so you could have a theoretical libertarian dictatorship. So everyone would be free, but just not allow government to do anything. So there were times that China looked like it might move down, not maybe libertarian dictatorships by any means, but move to if not a democratic multi-party system of some sort. But there was looking at times that possibly the regime would fall. The regime falling doesn't mean that it's going to be democracies. God, no, it could be some sort of neo-nationalist, as opposed to the old Chinese nationalist takeover, or some such other thing, or another cultural revolution, or who knows. But yeah, the whole we'll let that continue. The whole experiment, as you say, was with China. I do hope, though I fear it's not, but I do hope this whole COVID trade problem situation around the world, not just with China, has woken governments and corporations up to realize that, yeah, we shouldn't have all of America's medicines made in China. I know a lot of medicine for Europe is made in Europe, but to have the idea of that is can be in and of itself a problem, even if the regime isn't trying to make it a problem, whether it's something like COVID or just other trade interruptions. The global trade is good, but global trade is also bad. Ireland. No, I don't care enough about Ireland to want to give you anything. I think global trade is a good thing, but it is also a bad thing. It needs to be a balanced thing. Where and how do you balance it? It depends on the industry. I can't answer that right here and right now. And communism combined with capitalism creates socialism. No, I wouldn't. Because most of the quote-unquote socialist countries in Scandinavia region are really highly regulated capitalist economies with lots of social welfare programs. Where you get socialism, and I know Americans throw these terms around a lot, but where you get socialism is like when Britain nationalizes the car manufacturers, meaning the government owns the means of production. Whether it's like owning the national healthcare system in Britain, the government owns most all of the hospitals. There are a few private hospitals in Britain, but owns all of the hospitals, and so all of the doctors, nurses, people who clean the floors, whatever it is, all the jobs in the building, in the hospitals, are all government workers. That is socialism. Social welfare programs um, are different than socialism. They're social welfare programs. Um, whether we look at look at the Ponzi scheme that is America's social security system, and it's designed on the idea that there's only going to be a few old people, and there's going to be a lot more young people, and it will work. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of people, because of modern medicine, living from the age of 65 or something to the age of 100, and there might not be enough 20 and 30-year-olds to pay for the Ponzi scheme, but coming up in the future. But that is not socialism, in the sense that it's not meant to redistribute wealth, meaning take it from rich people and giving it to poor people. It's meant to manage the wealth. So 20-somethings and 30-somethings aren't worried about at that age their retirement age, so they're not saving for their retirement, so you're forcibly taking out money that you'll then give it to them later. And so it's not entirely redistributive. There is an element to it, but it's not designed to be redistributive in the sense of it. Okay, nav tactics advanced. Let's check this out, how we're doing. That would be under air. Yeah, we'll let that continue. Marxist theory, if I remember correctly, socialism was the middle point of seizing the means of production to progress towards the goal of a communist state. Yeah, well, how do I put this? Communism and socialism. Okay. You know what a rectangle is, right? It's like this window here. The rect is a rectangle, okay? It means four-sided thing that are all at right angles. I believe, four-sided object, drawing or whatever you want to call it. And all of the angles are at, at right angles, meaning they're, all at 90 degrees. That is a rectangle. Okay. A square is a four-sided object. All four corners are at right angles, but all of the sides of the rectangle are of equal size, right? So all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. Okay, so let's change this analogy to socialism. Socialism, okay, and communism. All communism is socialism, but not all socialism is communism. Okay, so in theory, now we can talk about in practice and reality and whatnot, blah blah blah. But in theory, communism is supposed to be extreme leveling. I use that term. It's a term that there were levelers in Britain back in the 17th century that I'm sure there were extremists, but it's not that they didn't want somebody to have, somebody couldn't have twice as big a farm as somebody else, but they wanted to get rid of the idea of the aristocracy, of large landholders, of things that are unfair. They wanted everyone to be fair. Now, they weren't communists, as far as I could tell, as in shared means of production or of the state. No, it was like a shoemaker would own his own shoe manufacturing shop that he would make his own thing. The farmer would have his own farm, and it would be his, and he'd have the right to sell it. But everyone was sort of leveled out. Not to have somebody has a farm 10 times the size of somebody else's farm. Everyone was going to be leveling. So communism is sort of that extreme levelingism, as well as extreme socialism, meaning all of the means of production are owned collectively through the state. Where a lot of socialist elements will go, well, yeah, we want national health care in Britain to be owned by the state. Yeah, okay, the car manufacturers get to be owned by the state. This gets to be owned by the state. That gets to be owned by the state. The railway companies get to be owned by the state. And they go, blah, blah, blah. These are owned by the state. Now, these other things, let's say a software manufacturing company, that might not be owned by the state. Or a regional bakery, that employs 500 people in Britain or something, might not be owned by the state. Highly taxed, highly regulated. But so we're in communism, all the bakeries, all of the shops that sell baked goods are all owned by the state. It's all state ownership. It's sort of extreme socialism. So communism really is just extreme socialism, but they're both socialism. And most socialists are one of two things. Lying to you in that they really are communists, but they know if they say they're communists, people will dismiss them, not vote for them, think that they're crazy. Or they're someone who believes, so either they're lying to you, which I think is actually the majority cases, or they're someone who believes that, yeah, full communism is bad, but somewhere on the spectrum of socialism is good. Now, and I don't mean just some minor thing, and I don't mean social welfare programs either. That's the difference. Like in America, we do have government-owned hospitals. We do have government-run hospitals. We have I don't know, we may have a larger government, I don't know. We may have a larger government-run hospital system than the NHS in Britain. It is the VA, Veterans Administration hospital system. There's one not too far from where I live. There is, a whole industry of medicine for veterans in America. And I don't know the current state on it. There's been pushes to say, well, hey, if you live here in Greensboro and there's no VA hospital, the VA should pay for you to go to whatever local hospitals instead of having you to travel down into Wilmington or whatever bigger city where there is a VA hospital. So you don't have to travel back and forth just to get to a damn VA hospital. You just pay to use a local. But hey, great, where you have enough veterans living in Wilmington here, you have a big VA hospital. So America runs national health care for our veterans. A veteran doesn't have to go there. He can go anywhere he wants to, but the VA doesn't pay for it. And it doesn't have to be anything related to his military or war service. It could just be, anytime after it for the rest of his life. He's in the VA system. They will take care of him. He has a motorcycle accident. The emergency room, wherever he goes, will take care of that. But then any long-term medical stuff, the VA takes care of it. So we do have that in America. But what we do have in America currently, and people don't realize this, most of the hospitals are privately owned. But if you are poor, the government will pay for your medical support. It may not be as good a medical support as if you are either rich or have a really good insurance program, but the government will pay for your medical care if you're poor. So it is a social welfare system as opposed to a socialism system. It is redistributive. That's why it's social, because it takes money from some people and gives it to others as in paying for their medical support. But that is different than socialism. Social welfare programs are the gateway to socialism, so they need to be watched, in my opinion, from becoming, you don't want a system that everybody just decides to go onto the government system. You want to be able to have a competitive system so that advancements happen. it's a big important thing. Thanks, Arno, for plugging everything. The Twitch channel, the YouTube channel. Okay, infantry unit training events. And all of these social systems, as well as socialism, because there are, to some degree, minor, but mostly social welfare. I got to look into some of the stuff, some of the details. Infantry unit training. Let's see, we're probably going to do some other 37 technologies. Okay, we got through those. No, do we? Oh, something happened to us. We lost a lot of. Okay. Now, you can also follow us. Yes, as Arno's pointing out, you can watch either on YouTube or on Twitch, whichever is the best feed for you. And mentioning that, I've gone on too long. We are going to end this episode here. Not the live stream, guys, so everyone can stay, hang out. But those watching later on YouTube, I try to keep these somewhat shorter. Thank you. Post your comments. Tell me, because I'm sure I'm getting something wrong on all of this, because I'm not working from notes or whatever. Correct me. Or if you just think I'm, wrong opinions, please post that below. Hit the like button. Subscribe if you're new. See you next time for even more, more Hearts of Iron and me pontificating on things.